If I know that I showed up for myself in the moment, then that feels amazing.
I noticed when I was going through the visioning process that it wasn't a writing process, it was a feeling process.
Penalty and punishment, like that's easy, but like reward feels distant. And so time to get closer to that, find what's true to, for me, because there are tons of things that I enjoy. It might just be a matter of building up my own list and having it available.
I don't have to. That's how I designed my life, and it took me decades to get here, but I'm here. So now from there, how do we improve?
The idea that by setting goals, of course, it seems like it's going to be a great thing and that it's all upside. Like we want to be ambitious, we want goals, we want to hit our dreams, etc. But there's a potential for downside. There's always a shadow when there's a light. And I think we both experienced it where it's like, I set all these goals and it's starting to feel, for lack of a better phrase, like I'm tiger momming myself, like I'm kind of dictating to myself, like I'm expecting perfection of myself, and where it becomes like pursuit of perfection, like of perfect achievement or of perfect completion, as opposed to it feeling really positive, it ends up being trying to run away from a feeling of failure. And so I'm curious if we can maybe explore this topic a little bit, what we've experienced in the past, and if there's any tips for keeping the idea of valuing high performance, but going about it peacefully instead of with coercion. So I'm curious what your experience has been with this.
There's no dream killer like your own, pessimism as you're going through this process. So I was saying before that I didn't sit in the success and the fulfillment for long enough. So that's part of it where I didn't congratulate myself. I didn't reward myself to feel good in the achievement of the goal. It was kind of like, if I don't meet the goal, then I'm beating up on myself. But when I do meet the goal, I'm also like, well, you should have done it sooner, or you should have done it better. Which, I mean, yeah, as a tiger mom, I guess, okay. But in reality, it's not even the best way for a tiger mom to encourage her kid to succeed. There has to be some reward or benefit or reason.
The idea of beating ourselves up and the idea of even comforting ourselves, it feels like two extremes, two kind of polarities, but they don't quite hit the mark. And I think we were talking about this in an earlier episode of what ended up happening in past 12-week year kind of accountability years for us. Beating ourselves up doesn't work, or it has so many negative effects that it ends up offsetting whatever positives we might get from it. It's not really sustainable. It's not really holistic. It's not really healthy. We don't feel good about it afterwards.
Right.
And so there is part of us that if we engage in, let's say, self-violence, then there will be another part of our personality. I'm a big fan of parts and stuff like that. Like there's going to be another part of our personality that will begin to rebel, and it will sabotage our efforts in order to get outside of the like cycle of violence or the abuse cycle. And so it's not aligned. It's not a win-win for everyone involved. It doesn't leave us feeling better. And then soothing ourselves or letting ourselves off the hook, as the phrase goes, also doesn't work. Because you can't just say like, oh, it's fine, you had great intentions. Like nothing got done. And so I think those are the two extremes that kind of don't work. I feel the presence of something that's in the middle that is supportive. Yeah. I think it's gentle. I think we might find inspiration from the ways that we approach socializing children, training children, very small children. We know that we can't like just yell at them, bark orders to them, or that they would even understand us or anything like that. We are encouraging, we reward, we are more focused on, or training a dog. Kids and dogs have very similar interfaces, at least young ones. It's more about rewarding the positive behavior and rewarding the wins. And they're like, oh, this is good. And so they become motivated to like seek the good instead of exposing them to too much aversion. It becomes a skill. And that high performance, truly high performance, is about aligning ourselves to something that feels good and building up our own system where we seek out things that feel good, that are genuinely good, because they're authentic to us, because they benefit our life, because it's win-win all around. Like, I'm really kicking ass here, and this is phenomenal, and no one's being harmed by this. This is great. And we get into this cycle of performance that feels good. And it doesn't involve self abuse. It doesn't involve unreasonable demands on ourselves, um, or comparison to others. I think it's a process of kind of finding that within ourselves and honing our techniques, almost like management of a company. If you ever try managing someone, you realize like, okay, I have accidentally done some sort of anti-pattern. I've accidentally done something that was not ideal or that didn't feel good to receive from my direct reports. And so it's about learning kind of management techniques and self-management techniques that are actually effective, but then feel good and so on.
Yes, I feel you. The whole purpose is feeling good, right? The reason we want this stress relief, confidence building, goal achievement is because we want to feel better. We think if we hit the goal, we're going to achieve this feeling. That's the whole point of the visioning process, right? How am I going to feel at the end of this? I'm going to feel like champion. What does being a champion feel like? It feels like I won, I have all this freedom and time and money and this and that and this and that. So we think we're going to feel better in the having of it. So then why not just feel better along the way, right? I think that's the whole purpose. And spiritually, I mean, this, as soon as you started speaking, that's what I'm hearing is like the faith-based part of it, which is we are here on this earth, arguably, some would say, to enjoy the fruits of our labors, to feel good. So if we're not enjoying that journey part on the way, then of course, when we hit the goal, it's going to be that same thing that I was experiencing when I didn't tap into that. It's going to be not sitting in the success for even a moment, or not feeling that fulfillment along the way means you probably won't really allow yourself to feel the fulfillment at the end. So what's different, this time versus prior times, I think is for me personally, maturity, a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of having allowed myself to feel fulfillment so that I know I need to feel that in each step to keep going. One other thing is I noticed when I was going through the visioning process that it wasn't a writing process, it was a feeling process. So, like I said, the first thing I did was make the plan. And then I asked ChatGPT and it got me started. And so then I just started typing, like, let me just edit what it wrote. But in order to edit, I had to stop. I had to physically close my eyes. I had to breathe. I did some belly breathing. I did all these things to take myself there, transport myself there. And what I realized was there's not much difference between the vision that I put and how my life is today. I'm super grateful for that. I mean, my life is amazing and I'm so happy, right? And I think that if I talked to 10 years ago me, I wouldn't say things like that. I'd be like, oh, I aspire for this. I want that. Like, I'm so discontented all the time. I'm sure 10 years, 15 years ago, at least I spent a lot of time crying, right? Because I was in law school. But today it feels like, okay, when I look out at 3 years and I want this amount of freedom, flexibility, time, um, for example, in the version ChatGPT gave me, it was like I'm working on meaningful work throughout the day and like whatever. And I'm like, I'm not working that much. Like I'm not going to be sitting at a desk for this amount of time, no matter where my office is, because I don't have to. That's how I designed my life. And it took me decades to get here, but I'm here. So now from there, how do we improve? And that improvement is just tweaking a little bit closer, taking a small step towards what feels good and a small step away from what feels bad. And as long as we keep moving towards that good feeling place, then I think that's what really is going to give us that support. Like keep moving, keep going towards your goals because there's a reason for going there, which is feeling better, like you said.
Part of what I'm hearing is that this time around, support is non negotiable. This time around, gentleness and peace to a certain extent are non-negotiable. Even as we apply kind of like a positive sense of stress, it's like the stress of it's the stress of achievement and competition. I think there's a difference between eustress and distress. So it's not distress, it's eustress, like almost like the beginning of the word euphoria. It's like a kind of a positive sense of it.
Okay. Yes.
And that's very different from maybe going in past quarters and past years when it was like, achieve the goal at all costs. So this time it feels more holistic. I'm not willing to sacrifice my regard for myself or my treatment of myself in order to achieve some sort of short-term goal. I am my own supporter. I am my own support, partner. I am my own kind of like cheerleader and so on. And all of the past behaviors of being harsh with myself and maybe all of these stories or assumptions or maybe lessons that I learned at some point in my life that like I have to be harsh with myself in order to get good results. Or, I can be gentle and supporting with everyone else, but I have to be like a jerk to myself internally. Like I call it my inner Marine sergeant, my inner drill sergeant and stuff like that. Like, no, I don't talk to myself like that anymore. Not
Right.
not nowadays, because it actually doesn't work. I think the inner work process and all the stuff we've done on our respective journeys and stuff like that has changed our relationship with productivity. It's not productivity at all costs, because ultimately we realize that productivity is in service to a better life. And so if we're making our lives shittier, or making the kind of conversation and dialogue in our minds and our spirits worse as we're pursuing these external goals, then we're net negative on that. Peaceful high performance is something to aspire to and something to align to and something to keep us in check when we are making one set of decisions or the others, or when we're like kind of choosing our attitude to go about these different goals.
Yes, when you're saying achievement at all costs, that really speaks to me. Whether we achieve the goal or don't achieve the goal, if we're hard on ourselves, I mean, we're not achieving the goal because the point of the goal is to feel better.
Yeah.
So it's reminding me of this story that Jim Carrey tells about his dad who was in a career that he was unhappy doing. But he's like, okay, so he spent his entire life and career in this job that he hated. And then at the end of it, you work in a job you hate and you die. Or you take a risk and you do something that you love. And then, it's like, man, I'm butchering this story, but you get the point.
That's part of high performance, I think, is that positive feedback loop. How am I not only going to have the high performance I had today, but even higher tomorrow? Like, well, let me marshal my ability to feel good about what I did, and then feel even more motivated and feel like I'm kind of building up this momentum and stuff like that. And that involves positive feeling, and that involves kind of acknowledgement and affirmation of what I did yesterday, and that involves building up a belief that I can do even more and that it's good for me.
Tell me some of the ways you found to have the good feeling place, like some of the rewards that you thought of, or maybe some of the penalties that you did in the past.
I think I actually have a hard time motivating myself with pure rewards and penalties because they feel a couple degrees too far. And so I don't make the direct association between the reward or the penalty and the activity. I think what really ends up getting to me is honestly pride. There are fairly few sources of positive, healthy pride out there.
Mm.
And so, like most of the time, it's almost, I mean, it's one of the deadly sins, right? So it's kind of like it gets a pretty bad rap. Most of the time we hear it, we're like listening into the conversation, like, what are y'all talking about over there with the word pride? Like, I'll just speak for myself, like personal pride based on what I did, how I showed up, and basically how I showed up for myself. That's kind of like a really healthy source of pride that I don't need to explain to anyone. I don't need to show off about it. It's not like a display kind of a thing. And I don't need to share it with anyone. If I know that I showed up for myself in the moment, then that feels amazing. And as I think back to the times that I showed up for myself in the past, including investing in positive habits or reading cool books or kind of like investing time and stuff like that, it really generates this almost like a body of work, but kind of like a body of pride. And that really does it for me because that's the emotional, yeah, that's the feeling. It reminds me of David Goggins. He's got this idea of he took the same concept, but he really kind of formalized it. He's got the idea of a cookie jar, of whenever he achieves something, he kind of puts a cookie in the cookie jar, and then whenever he's down on himself or whenever he's thinking about quitting and he doesn't have motivation, he kind of like opens up that cookie jar, goes in there and fishes out like a memory of him just winning and him showing up for himself. And he's like, remember that time that you put in all this effort and you achieved that? No one was around, like, and you did that. And so it's a way of kind of like depositing and withdrawing when you need it on your stores of positive pride. So I think that ends up being my main reward. And penalty, I think I'm getting over being harsh with myself, and so I don't, I kind of have an overabundance of penalties that I'm trying to get out of the habit of using.
I mean, I hear you talking about pride, and it sounds to me like you're talking about self-confidence, like that feeling of I'm proud of myself, not like my pride and ego are blinding my path. It sounds more like integrity. I had this expectation of myself, no one's watching, and I did it anyway. I know there's that connotation of pride with the negative, but I think there's a positive way to use that emotion where it propels you forward.
Yeah, and it's the more I think about it, the more it feels true for me, and that's great because if that's all that I need for motivation, my own memories, and my own expectations for myself, and that can be the driving force, then that's wonderful because uh, I don't really need anything external. I can bring that along with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine were definitely more tangible and
Hmm.
external. I did some reflection on the last week of what things happened that felt like a reward and what things happened that felt like I was being penalized. And so then it helped me easily come up with a short list. And I'm sure if I think back more than a week, I could come up with more examples. It helped me identify like, oh man, I would love to avoid feeling like I felt in that moment. If I tie these to my achievement of the 85% success or below 85% on our accountability check-ins, then knowing that I think will help me stay awake. So, for example, I'll share a few. The things that happened in the last week that felt like rewards were I had 5 minutes of quiet time and I put on noise canceling headphones. I plugged in and I listened to a new song that I wanted to hear with all the components of the music in there. You could hear the bass and everything. It wasn't just like the tinny Alexa, whatever, like going in the background. It was like I really got to sit in the music and enjoy it. That felt like a reward. I pulled out my guitar and played some music. That felt like a reward. That always is like this out of body experience that feels like a real reward that I don't give to myself frequently enough. It's all like that. Guitar, piano, singing. It gives me that out of body feeling of clarity. We went to a breakfast buffet and just totally indulged, and it was amazing. I bought a trendy clothing item, which which is not my style. I'm a very like wear the same thing a million times in a row kind of person, so that felt like a reward. And then for the penalties, I had to deal with a very inconvenient bank issue because of my own doing, where I had to drive to multiple banks. That felt like a penalty. I don't know how I would implement that one, but another one was I cleaned out the freezer, like deep scrubbing, removing all the drawers and putting them in the sink and drying them, and it was really gross. So that's a real penalty that I could easily enforce. Like I don't hit 85%, I have to clean out the freezer. Uh, Cleaning the microwave also gives me that same vibe. I don't like either of those things. And then doing like old to-do list items, things that I've been delaying and putting off, those feel like penalties for sure.
I have to say, yeah, after going through your list of things that feel like rewards, I feel like I didn't actually do the exercise. So I think I will need to revisit this and maybe I'll get ChatGPT to help me out because there's a lot of, I don't know, I'm grappling with some areas where I have a little bit of emotional blindness, numbness, something like that, where I'm not used to feeling into certain feelings. And so it's really helpful in these situations when I've used AI in the past to say like, hey, like, what do this is a weird way of phrasing it, but like, what do typical people feel here? Make me a list. What's the map? Like, give me a map. And then, of course, once I see it, I recognize it because I felt these things. But I
So you're gonna
wouldn't
ask a
necessarily.
computer how to feel.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask it to draw me a map of how humans feel, right? And then in an area, and then once it does that, I'm like, oh, I recognize all of these. I've felt most of these. It's just I wouldn't if you asked me the question, I wouldn't necessarily be able to recall or retrieve or articulate or organize all of
Right.
those things. And so it's great for that kind of thing. Like they say that in memory, recognition is way more powerful than recall. And so if I can see things in a list and I'll highlight 7 out of 10 of them, then
Yeah.
that's great. And so I think I will explore the idea because I don't, like I mentioned, I don't know that I have a strong relationship with the idea of reward. Definitely penalty and punishment. Like that's easy, but like reward, it feels distant. And so time to get closer to that, find what's true for me, because there are tons of things that I enjoy. It might just be a matter of building up my own list and having it available. I've got plenty of wall space here, so I'll tack it up and get to rewarding myself. So uh, yeah, we are. I mean, we're a little off the exact calendar date, but getting into week one of execution, keeping track of how many of our stated goals or stated tactics we actually achieved, and giving ourselves the score. How are you feeling going into this first period?
I feel like it wasn't perfect coming in, and that's basically how it's going to be because that's how goal setting and achievement is. So I don't have the exact 100% map ready like I wanted to coming into Wednesday today, but I am definitely 85% or more there. So I'll take it. Okay, that'll be my first step towards being a little more realism with myself. One major improvement that I made from prior years is that I'm really only giving myself the one goal. So I could have easily distracted myself with a lot of health and fitness and baby and all these other goals. Like, okay, I'll just do this side goal here and that side goal there, like I did every prior quarter. And suddenly this is the quarter where I need to be fluent in Spanish. But instead, it's like just the one thing. If I hit this thing, I'm gonna feel really fucking good at the end of
Yeah,
this quarter. I know. How's week one for you?
it's good. I mean, I have a much more detailed and more viable plan uh, this quarter than I think I would have created if I had come up with it just on my own. So AI really helped in that. And it also helped in creating various artifacts. I love telling AI to create me random artifacts and like kind of side document. It created a plan. It created a few documents, including like a quick one pager summary that I can maybe post around the house or have on my desk, as well as a longer one. Um, and then it also even created like a weekly scorecard template. And it was like, okay, print out 12 of these. And I'm loving the fact that I have a printer. So I'm like, great, this is what the printer's for. So I have one of these and to fill out like it's a school project, week one, write your name at the top kind of a thing. And each one of the tactics. I like having this stuff in front of me. I also took your advice from last time and put sticky notes, at least 7 sticky notes, like on every mirror in my house, and then also the fridge. Oh yeah, I have to put one on the fridge, and a few other places. And so everywhere I look, it's like, and I have one goal, to ship this app. I'm feeling good coming into this, and these recordings, and also knowing that I'm going to meet with you has really restored and rejuvenated and strengthened this feeling of accountability. This was the feature. This was the whole point of having an accountability system, setting goals in the first place, is to not feel accountability as a burden, but feel it as something that actually makes things real and makes us, feel good about moving closer to them. So feels good.
So then what happens in the first accountability check-in if we hit 85%, or what happens if we don't hit 85%?
That's a good question. I think we've had some experience with that in the past, but I'd be open to some coaching from our AI overlords. Like, hey, what are some things that can help? What are some things, what does failure look like? What would be something not to do?
I want to get away from the justification. I know that in prior years, I mean, I would just show up incomplete and then make justifications, and then sometimes you would support me in that. And then Marcello would show up and not support me in that. But
Let's say we do miss. It might be useful to do a quick postmortem. So it's not about soothing or kind of like reassuring or making a story around it, but like, maybe we don't necessarily have to screen share, but like pull up our calendar. Where was it supposed to go?
yeah,
Like what happened at the allotted time? Well, I did this instead, or I just didn't feel like it, or I ended up I realized that I didn't have the materials and then I ended up getting distracted doing something else. So like a little bit of a little bit of closure, but it's not to explain it away. Oh, I feel like I did a good job anyway. It's about to say like, oh, this is how I missed.
Rather than the postmortem being to justify, it'll be so that we can't use that same justification the next time, creating a
Yep.
fix so that in the next week we don't fall back on that same issue where we didn't put it in the calendar or whatever else happened. I just
Nice.
really want to be sure to not allow myself to, weasel out because it's not going to feel good at the end of the 12 weeks if
Nope.
I don't hit this goal, right?
Maybe I think part of that is, let's say we reach the end of the accountability period, whenever it is, or like the check-in period. And then we check in and it's like, oh, I missed. Okay. Could we have seen the miss coming in advance? Could we have seen the iceberg in advance? And I think the answer is yes. And maybe there's a couple ideas here, but one of them might be, did we actually commit to something at the beginning of the period? It might be worth a quick check-in, like a text message or something like that. Like, hey, I have my weekly plan. I have my tactics down for this week. I have them written. I have them committed to. Because if
Yes,
we're writing them during the accountability meeting, then we're not really doing the thing, right? We're kind of
100%.
like filling in stuff so that we get a score. Like they weren't the things that we committed to. So maybe that might be a little check.
That's totally fair. We know now what's going to get in our way in the coming week. I
Hmm.
already know that like my kid takes naps at certain times and he goes to bed at a certain time. And just in trying to get this initial planning done, I knew it's not going to happen during the day, right? It's going to happen after 8:30 p.m. at night, after I've made dinner and, kid is down and all of that. Knowing that every night is not Netflix night or whatever else, right? Like there's a space set aside to actually get this done.
The weekly tactics, like confirming that we have them committed to at the beginning of the week, not blank spaces to be filled later in the week. And then also like the expected obstacles so that we know what we're going to have to work around.